Hey guys, it's David
And Boki.
from Gigi's Fabric Shop and Juki Junkies, and today we're going to be talking about shredding your thread and skip stitches, the two most annoying issues a sewer might run into. And there's so many different things that can cause this to happen, so we want to narrow it down and go over all the things that can cause it so you can figure out how to fix it and what the solution is to the issue. So let's start off with the basics. A lot of people don't really get that with sewing machines, the smallest little thing can cause the biggest issue on your machine. So number one, the biggest thing in my opinion is probably just not threading your machine correctly. So your machine is just threaded incorrectly. You may have just missed the smallest little detail, and it's just hanging up somewhere and it's causing your thread to break. It's causing your thread to not feed properly, and it's causing you to get those skip stitches. Or the next biggest thing would be a dirty machine. A lot of people don't even take off their stitch plate on their machine ever.
Naughty.
And the only time they ever clean their machine is when they bring it in professionally once every 1 to 2 years, and by then their machine is struggling. Not to mention, when it's that dirty in there, it's causing more stress on your machine and the gears in the machine. So you're just wearing your machine out more by not cleaning your machine. So make sure your machine's getting professionally cleaned at least once a year, or you are professionally cleaning it yourself and you kind of know what you're doing and taking things apart and properly cleaning it well.
And we have that video too.
Yes,
about how to clean it.
We have that video on a deep cleaning on this machine and pretty much all Juki machines. We also have how to thread your machine correctly on pretty much all Juki machines, and if we don't, drop it down in the comments and we'll make one. The next thing is your needle. Your needle can cause a lot of issues as well. If your needle's super dull, if your needle's not inserted all the way up, if it's not straight, it's not the correct size. We've seen a lot of people put the wrong size needles in their machines and the scarf's not even facing the right way. I just recently did a cleaning on a machine the other day, and I cleaned the whole machine. I started sewing and it was making a weird noise and it was skip stitching, and I was like, what the heck is going on? Come to find out, the needle, I just changed the needle. The needle was probably never changed.
Dull.
So make sure you're changing your needle, every big sewing project, or in between every big sewing project?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good rule of thumb for sure. And the last thing is just your thread quality. So just making sure you're using good thread quality. So it's kind of like a car. What you put in your car is how good your car is going to run, right? So it's got to have the right gasoline. It's got to have the right oil for it to run properly. So using poor quality threads, those like really cheap kind of grab and go threads, they're not the highest of quality. So you want to make sure you're using good, luscious, high quality type of thread, so that way it feeds through the machine better. That's why we really like the Glide thread, obviously, because the Glide is a poly thread. It's really silky, just smooths through the machine really nicely. So thread quality is a big one. It honestly sounds almost like it's a really small thing, but it makes a big difference. Even
if it's good thread quality, what if that thread was sitting in a very hot environment for a month or two, or even a couple years sitting in your garage, and you go to bring it inside to sew on it, and you realize that, well, you might not realize, but your machine is realizing that your thread is it's expired, dry, or expired, or just old. So make sure you're using threads that are newer and stored in a climate controlled area, and they're not super old threads.
Those are the basics. You definitely want to run through the basics first. It doesn't matter how long you've been sewing. It's sometimes maybe you just have an off day. You got to go through the basics first, and then there's a couple other things me and David will explain that are next.
And even coming from two people that do this for a living, is sewing machines, and understanding what makes them have issues, that is still where we start. We start at the basics 120%, because a lot of the times we find the issues at the basics.
Exactly.
It's usually not something technical.
Oh yeah, 90% of the time it's a user error, unfortunately, but that's a good thing. I would rather it be a user error than something wrong with the machine, so don't take offense to a user error.
No.
Let's just be happy.
We like them because it makes it easy.
We like user error, it's easier.
Easy fix.
So let's do the next couple things that if after you've gone through the basics, you've gone through those things, what else could it be?
Okay, so now that we've gone over the basics, let's start inspecting our machine for specific things that could have happened to it while sewing. The first thing we like to inspect, we're going to work our way from the top down, is going to be the stitch plate. Everybody has a stitch plate on their machine, and if you notice right here where your needle hole is in your stitch plate, you might either have a single needle like a TL, or you might have a jelly bean looking stitch plate hole like a computerized machine would have. You'll notice that it should be very, very smooth, and there should be nothing in that area that could hang up on a thread. However, if you have a needle puncture in your stitch plate, it creates burrs on the stitch plate, which allow the threads to get hung up on it and either shred, break, or cause skip stitches.
Right.
So it's very important to inspect your stitch plate, and I'll show you here up nice and close. You can see that there's little tiny holes around this stitch plate that are from the needle puncturing the stitch plate. That can be caused from sewing too thick of materials, maybe pushing your fabrics and causing that needle to bend. If you have a Juki TL, we recommend always using the thick throat plate if you're seeing a lot of these, because it has a bigger hole, so it allows your needle to flex more.
Yeah.
If you have a computerized machine, it's probably just you're sewing over something really, really thick, or you're free motion quilting and dragging your fabric, pulling that needle and causing it to hit the
tugging
plate.
can cause it too.
So definitely check that out. That's going to be the first thing. A quick fix for this is going to be try to file it down with a small, very fine file. The next step would be replacing this part.
Yeah.
So that can cause skip stitches, shredding. It can cause a lot of different issues. So that's number one thing to check. Number two is going to be the bobbin case. The bobbin case is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, we have like a graveyard of bobbin cases because it's the first thing that we always look for. So
Especially in computerized machines.
yes,
TLs, mechanical
Not so
machines,
much.
a metal bobbin case, you don't really ever get into
they
issues
take a
with
beating
them.
usually.
Yeah.
So.
But the computerized bobbin cases, if your needle flexes and it doesn't hit the jelly bean or the stitch plate, it's probably going to be hitting your bobbin case.
Yep.
Or causing, or something else. What else can cause a burr in
Like
your,
having
in your
a
bobbin
broken
case?
needle. So like if your
Broken
needle
needle.
breaks and you don't find all the bits and
And it just-
pieces, it's scratching around the plastic. Like it's a perfect recipe to scratch it up. Putting it in improperly after cleaning
It's
it.
not installing it all the way.
Exactly.
So we're going to throw up a nice little close-up of this, and you'll see on this bobbin case you have a burr on the side of it here. You have little tiny needle puncture holes here. It's just extremely important to inspect your bobbin case. And this can just be not even the cause of skip stitches or shredding. It can be a cause of just a noisy machine.
That too.
So-
A loud machine comes from a lot of
bobbin
people
case.
from a bobbin case that they had like a needle breakage. So it not only scratches that part up, but it actually scratches up the basket as well. There's nothing you can do about the basket, unfortunately, but the actual bobbin case itself, always replace that if there's burrs because it causes a lot of issues. Maybe not right now, but later. So.
And another quick fix for this, so you guys just have an understanding of what you can do to fix this issue if you're on the fly, you're on a sewing project and you want to
Right.
kind of start sewing. You can either grab some very fine sandpaper and try to file down any burrs that you see.
Yeah.
And when I say little burrs can cause issues, I mean little things can cause issues. So inspect for the littlest burr or needle puncture.
Especially on the sides, like on the side outline, because sometimes it's not super obvious. We have some examples that will zoom up on like the sides too. That's really big because the thread wraps around the case. So if there's anything on the sides, it's going to catch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sand that down with some very fine sandpaper, and if it's past that point, then you probably should just go ahead and
get a
order
new
a
one.
new one.
Yeah.
And we'll, JukiJunkies.com has all the parts for all your Juki sewing machines in stock, and they ship very, very fast. So that's always a great option. So we've gone over the stitch plate, the bobbin case.
Yep.
The
and
next thing.
Another thing that causes sometimes when you get burrs on these plates is actually due to the spool cap. So I'm going to dive into that really quick for you guys to understand how important it is to make sure you're using the correct spool cap on your machine.
Yes.
So on most computerized machines, you're going to get 3 different sizes. And a lot of people use this one because when you take the machine out of the box, this is what's on there, this really big one. But if you'll notice in your accessory case, you'll get a medium-sized one, and you'll also get this really itty-bitty one. So it's really important that you're using the right spool cap size that reflects the best to your spool. So obviously, since we use Glide, you can see here, this is a lot bigger than the spool. So what's happening is the thread is like traveling around this guy, and that's just leaving too much wiggle room for it to get caught.
Causing friction.
Friction, yeah, exactly. It's just too much stuff going on. So I would use the small one here because it's the closest in size to my spool. So that way there's less for it to travel around. It's a much more smoother, evenly fed off process too. So the reason why you want to do that is because when this travels off, it gets caught in between these 2 sections right here. It's really important that the thread is falling off evenly so that way there's no resistance when it's sewing through, because that could cause this to jolt out of position and then cause a burr on the actual bobbin case as well. So it might have been not something you did right away or you put it in properly, but the bobbin case was the other issue. Another way to resort that if you kind of don't want to have to deal with that issue, because if you don't want to keep an eye on it, get the spool stand for the back, the thread stand. You can install it to the back on virtually all the computerized machines and have that there so that way your spools are vertical so you don't have to worry about it traveling off this way. It comes off more evenly. So.
And you can use the king spools.
And the king spools, right, which are totally worth the money because you get 5 times the thread for not 5 times the price. So that's a really good one.
We've gone over the bobbin case, stitch plate, spool caps. The next biggest thing would be
needle size. Needle size is a big one, just because needle size there's a lot of room in needle sizes, right? So you gotta know what's your maximum for your machine. For most Juki computerized machines, it's a size 16 needle. So if you're working with something really thick, you wanna make sure you're using a bigger needle. For free motion quilting, for example, you wanna make sure you're using like an 80-12 or a 90-14. I would always suggest a 90-14 for free motion quilting. Anything smaller is just really thin for free motion quilting.
And we have a video going over the needles, so
watch that.
We'll put the link for that in the description.
Yeah, so the needle size is really important because with bulkiness, what's happening is if it's really thick, the needle is going down, but there's just so much resistance going there, so the bottom is not able to hook with the top. So that's what's causing your skip stitches there. So watch that video about the needle sizes so that way you know you're using the right needle in the right project.
And then after you've checked all of those steps, the basics, you've watched this video all the way up to this point.
Yep.
You'll probably, if you're still having those issues, skip stitching, shredding, you're probably going to, and it's consistent, exactly. Yeah. It's not just sometimes here and there, because there could technically be other, things that could cause skip stitching, such as too thick of material you're sewing.
Exactly.
Your material's too thick, you don't have the right size needle for the material you're sewing, maybe your foot pressure is too heavy. Yeah. So there is some other small things, but that kind of goes into just like the specific project you might be sewing at that moment.
Exactly.
These are things that would be causing issues consistently, so keep that in mind. But once we figure that out, if you're still having these consistent issues, then we probably need to bring the machine into a technician to make sure that the timing is still correct and everything is timed perfectly, your belts are all tight, the machine's clean. All of those things can be a factor into that as well.
Yeah, timing's usually like really, really consistent. It's like my machine's not stitching at all, like it's not connecting whatsoever, and that usually happens from hitting the needle plate or hitting a pin or hitting hardware on a bag or a zipper, a teeth or something. So just keep an eye out for timing. Timing is usually a consistent all the time. It won't sew really at all. So.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of gone over everything, I think that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, comment them down below. We love answering questions in the comment section. Make sure you like this video, share it with a friend that's having issues with their machine, and make sure you hit that subscribe button because we post every Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're interested in any parts, accessories, new machines, anything that is related to Juki or sewing, make sure you check out JukiJunkies.com. We're a small family-owned business here in Brandon, Florida, just outside of Tampa. And we pretty much ship orders the next day or the same day that they come in. So we have very quick shipping. We're known for that. And we pride ourselves in excellent customer service. So give us a call if you have any questions, and we're happy to help you out. So
you guys have a great day. See you soon.
See ya.